I wear monitors in the studio when I'm working on music, but the full honesty, I've never worn in-ear monitors on stage. I'm a jazz upright bass, but it's not necessary. So, but I do get a lot of, I use them all the time in the studio. It's just not on stage. So, are there some sort of simplified strategies for getting a great in-ear monitor mix on stage for say, people that are putting them in their ears for the first time, and like the in-ears are it's your last bastion. So it's like the end result. So if you don't know what to ask for, you don't know, there's the vast majority of musicians don't really know how to mix.
Yeah.
They're artists or on stage singing. Like, absolutely. I don't know what frequency to ask for. I don't know how to pan stuff. We're not all engineers. So are there some simple things, say a guy just gets their in-ears. They've never worn them before. They put them in their ears. What's your strategy?
Yeah.
How do you create the sound?
If you want that natural listening experience, first of all, with the drums, mix from the overheads in, not the close mics out.
That's great.
The overheads are the best representation of what your real ears will hear in that space.
Yeah.
So turn your overheads up so that you get a real good overall sense of the kit and the room and the space around the kit.
Yeah.
And then add the close mics to taste to kind of round out the pointedness and the immediacy that you are going to need. You can't just have your close mics off. You're going to want some of that.
Yeah.
But start with the overheads. And actually, you could take that one step further. Start with the vocal mics and then do the overheads. Because the vocal mics are actually going to be the best representation of the entirety of the room.
Yeah.
And the space that you're in. And you can get all your close mics in the room and all your DIs and everything and all the amp mics or your amp modelers, all that stuff perfect. And then once you add vocals and overheads, it can absolutely destroy your mix. Because one of the most dangerous things to add to the mix afterwards is the space and is the room. But if you start with getting the space right and then add all that immediate information like your DIs and your microphones and everything like that, you add that later to taste and to get things to cut through a little bit more.
Yeah.
Then you've created a natural experience in your in-ears. Then you've created that sense of space, that openness, that three-dimensionality in the room that you're in. You get the character of the room. You get the feedback from the audience without even having proper audience mics. Now that's kind of your next level.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a luxury. There's not a lot of artists that actually travel with audience mics that face out towards the people where you can really get the audience experience. But even without that, just starting with the mics that are picking up the space. So your vocal mics and your overheads.
Yeah.
That is the best way to get perspective on the room, to add width and dimension to your mix, and then add your close mics to taste.
Yeah.
That's probably the most important tip and one of the most important things I've ever learned about building a natural experience in my IEMs.
Does that help eliminate the this is the feedback I get, is this constant thing of the turn it up, just going with gain. Does that help resolve it? Like if you get start with the kick drum and it's nice big and full, then you're like everything thereafter you're trying to get, turn it up because the kick drum's
right
too big and full. Does it help with that?
While creating space can certainly help you turn everything up and have everything stay in its own lane and not just stacking on top of itself.
Yeah.
First of all, I hope that everybody has a chance to experience a stereo in your mix over just a mono in your mix, because that's kind of, panning is as powerful a tool as volume, sometimes more. Yeah. Sometimes if you want more of something because you're not hearing it enough, try panning it elsewhere and creating a different lane for it. And suddenly you have all the clarity and it has its own space and you actually don't need to turn it up. You can hear it as well as you were hoping to hear it just by moving it to a different position in your stereo image. Yeah. So, and that's one of the things you can try. Another thing is, for me as a bass player on stage, I actually find volume is the most powerful tool. Overall mix volume is the most powerful tool to get my level right with where I'm sitting and how the bass feels and sounds to me. The first thing I'll try, if I don't hear myself enough, is not ask for more bass, but I'll turn my overall volume up a couple notches, because volume doesn't affect everything the same. It tilts things. And that's another thing we can talk about.
Yeah.
And so what you're going to tilt the most with volume is the low end. And then secondary to that is the extreme high end. But the really low information is the first thing that to kind of go up like this relative to everything else as you add volume.
Yeah.
And so I actually often find that if I'm not hearing myself clearly enough, I just turn up my pack. And that's the change I need. And then I haven't turned anything else up, and I haven't saturated my mix.
Yeah.
I've just turned the overall volume up, and there's the clarity I was hoping to get out of my bass guitar. The last thing that I really recommend people do is get slightly more aggressive with your high pass filters across the board than maybe you're even comfortable doing. Right out of the gate, I will actually put a high pass filter anywhere from it depends on the room, but anywhere from 55 to 75 hertz. Cut it out aggressively.
Yeah.
Now you might think that's all your low end. That must be a horrible experience. But it's funny how the brain kind of fills in the gaps. It doesn't feel like I don't have low end in the kick or in the bass. But what I do know is that there's a lot of fatiguing and saturating information that has been cut out.
Yeah.
And it has created immense clarity across the board. I know most audio engineers, monitor techs, will innately put high-pass filters essentially on almost everything anyways, but just as that last line of defense, on my send from the monitor console to my ears, the overall stereo send, I will also, just as a safeguard, put an aggressive high-pass filter on that to add that extra layer of clarity to the entirety of the mix, to make sure that nothing is just lingering and slow moving frequencies aren't just kind of hanging out and saturating my overall mix. And that allows me to keep things like my own self quieter, because I'm not muddying things up. I'm not taking up all the space. I get all this clarity and natural high end and stringiness and all that good stuff from my bass guitar that helps me cut through. And I find myself not missing low end.
Yeah.
I mean, there's times where I'll actually look around when I'm on stage and forget that I'm on in-ears. The sense of direction and space and three-dimensionality that I'm getting is so real and so organic that it eliminates that sense of isolation that I know a lot of people are worried about with IEMs.